the question being asked is the rate of black babies being killed over against other kinds of human beings,
right?
Whether it's white, whether it's Asian, whether it's Latino, whatever. And she then moves to try to suggest that the issue of unintended pregnancies in black communities are the result of systemic racism and racist issues. Wait a second. The issue of unintended pregnancies is actually a moral issue within any tribe. I'm going to use biblical terminology. Tribes, right? We're all from one mom and dad, and there's different tribes. You got white tribes, black tribes. You got all kinds of different tribes, like biblical language tribes. We're all from the same mom and dad. All of us are related. We're all image of God. We all go back to the same parents, okay? So we're just different tribes of human beings around the world. And she's suggesting here that the issue of more black babies being killed is the issue of some sort of racial issue related to black people that causes them to have more unintended pregnancies. And you've got issues of poverty. No, I'm sorry. The issue of unintended pregnancies is a moral issue. It's an issue of fornication. And if you have a group of people who are getting pregnant and then killing their children, and you move it back and back and back and back, you're talking about the issue of sex outside of marriage. That's really the issue. And so the question really has to go down to, wait, are you suggesting that black people, because this is what she's saying, are you suggesting that black people have sex before marriage at higher rates because of poverty and racism? Is that how you handle sexual morality? By claiming it's because of poverty and racism or systemic racism, people having sex as black people more with unintended pregnancies because of racism? No, it's a moral issue. I would actually say this. I would look more, whether it's a black group, a black population, a white population, an Asian population, whatever kind of population. And you're saying there's some real issues of morality here where people are like not like being married and committed together to have children, they're having children, they're killing their children. I would say, let's check out the culture. Let's check out the culture going on. Like if we're saying like white people do this, I would say, let's take a look at white culture and let's see like what would be happening in white culture to create that kind of environment.
Well, especially with something so specific, there is only one act that creates a child. It would be very easy to actually get some legitimate statistics.
Oh, for
You'd
sure.
have to have willing participants, but you could actually, this is an investigation you could actually have if anyone was interested in telling people they shouldn't have sex outside of marriage.
Yeah, it's not wrong to look into the white community, white population, and ask questions culturally to say like, well, what's going on there with like moral issues? And like, where could that come from? Like, what's the instigator that creates that situation, right? It's not wrong to look in a black community and say, okay, well, what's creating it within your community? Like, what's the worldview? What's the belief system? How is it happening? And look, it's just known. We understand this. We got black brothers and sisters, solid pastors and others, leaders, who point this out to us. They're white brothers and sisters and say, we've got a problem with fatherlessness in the black community.
Yes.
We got a problem with fatherlessness. And so, like, I just had a conversation. In the last week as a father, I've had 3 conversations, just spiritual conversations with family and with others, young, like teenagers, talking about faithfulness, fidelity, and talking about like sex before marriage and why God calls us to not live that way. Like, that's what I do as a father. That's what I do in my community, as I promote the way that God made the world and made us and why it's so beautiful in this way. And it's such a gift and why you have to protect that and preserve that and don't have sex outside of marriage. I just had the conversation at 6 o'clock last night with a young guy. That's what happened in my community. And my community is not a white community. Our church is blended, right? But that's what fathers do, and that's what leaders, men who are leaders, do. They preach that stuff. If you got a problem with fatherlessness in the black community, probably the reason that there's a moral problem of sexual immorality in any group is that there's no fathers and men leading that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the situation, you got all these unintended pregnancies. It's like, it's a moral question. I'd be looking more into WAP. Right?
Yes.
Is it wrong to suggest that? If the culture and music and environment being promoted is about sex and WAP and all the other things and money and drugs and all the rest. If that's what you're feeding to your population, is it any surprise that people are like actually living according to it? Like living according to, we can just have sex, and this is, and it's okay to have sex and have babies and not have a father in the home and to not be connected and to not have a unit. Like I'd be looking more at things like that rather than systemic racism and poverty as the reason why people are having sex. Like people are having sex and having babies because of systemic racism and poverty and those sorts of things. Really? But just real fast, the issue of she thinks that she can solve, as a law professor now, someone who's supposed to be good at reasoning, good at definitions, all of that, cogent thinker, coherent, all that stuff. She thinks that if you can create the social benefits for people, in other words, like Luke said, socialism, if we can create that, then people aren't going to be having unintended pregnancies and killing their children. How many rich white people do we see killing their children? Lots of them. I mean, we've been doing abortion ministry for years, and I'll tell you the truth. I mean, the people are pulling up, by and large, many of them driving nice cars, and they're doing fine. And they're, a lot of white people.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, in Arizona, where we live, very few black people.
Yeah.
On a daily basis going into the abortion facilities. What do we see mostly? White people.
White college students.
Mm-hmm. White people. I see white people. And, I see I know plenty of well-to-do white people that have killed I know well-to-do rich white people who have had 3-4 abortions. How's that work for them? No systemic racism on their part, right? And they're not in poverty, and they're still having unintended pregnancies, and they're still killing their children. No, people don't kill their children because of that. We're not giving enough money to people. And by the way, you don't solve the problem that she's referring to. You don't solve it by, again, government handouts. Like, okay, if a person, it doesn't matter what color they are, white, black, Asian, doesn't make a difference what color they are. If their worldview, their mindset is, I don't want to work, I don't want to create, I don't want to feel any pain, I don't want to be stressed, I just want to, smoke weed and drink all day. That happens across cultures. It doesn't matter. Not black, white, it's everywhere, right? If someone's mindset is that, I do not want to work for what I receive, I just want it handed to me. If that's how they are, like that's their poverty lifestyle, they don't have any drive or ambition or discipline or perseverance or creativity. If they're not like that, then when you give them, if they are like that and you give them a check, and say, well, I'll pay for all your needs, I'll pay for your home, pay for all your food and everything else. Like, you don't solve the problem of their lack of ambition and their lack of discipline by handing them more money.
Well, and the point of
it's a hard issue.
The point of the early socialists was to create control over a population.
That's the point. Socialism is not about fixing a problem.
Get rid of them.
Yeah.
So that they could get rid of them, not so that they could take care of them.
Yeah.
So that they could exterminate them.
The anti-Christian worldview of the socialists is not going to solve any problems. It doesn't solve the problem of the heart. It doesn't solve the problem of the discipline or the lack of discipline. It doesn't do that. You know who does solve that problem? The Spirit of God. When you're reconciled to God through Christ, through faith in Him alone, you have a new heart. You have the mind of Christ. You desire the things of God. And so you also desire wisdom. And as imperfect as that might look in your life, there's the conviction of the Holy Spirit. It's the work of the Spirit of God in your life. And the Spirit of God convicts you for what? Your laziness.
Yeah.
For your lack of discipline. For your lack of self-control. Like, you get convicted of those things. And so, like, in reality, if you want people out of poverty and that kind of, like, drive to, like, just live under the government's money and not do anything, if you want to get them out of that, socialism is not going to solve the problem. More government help isn't going to solve the problem. The problem is the problem of the heart. It's a lack of discipline. It's sin, ultimately idolatry, all the rest with addiction. And so you need new hearts. It's only Christ that can solve this. It is Christ or chaos, period. And so you're not going to solve the problem she's aiming at by giving more money and creating the environment where the government basically hands this out and solves the problem of poverty. The problem of poverty is a problem of the heart and the mind. That's it. I can prove it too. How many people do you need presented before you who came to this country with nothing, with literally $20 in their pockets, and they become some of the most wealthiest and stars of our culture. I mean, you know who else? You know, just one story, just because it's just popped in my head. There's so many stories. Arnold Schwarzenegger comes to this country. He's got nothing. He comes with like a few dollars in his pocket, and he becomes one of the...
And some weights.
Yeah, exactly. He came with drive. He came with ambition. He came with a work ethic, clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, look at the man's body in the 70s. He knows how to work, and he's willing to
That wasn't
endure.
an accident.
No, exactly. It didn't happen overnight. He didn't take a pill for that. He labored and hurt for that.
The government can't give you that.
Someone didn't give him those muscles.
Exactly. So the point is there's so many stories of people like that were poor, technically poor, but there was something different in them in terms of discipline, perseverance, the willingness to suffer, the desire to work and to labor, and they pulled themselves out of poverty, and they did it without the government's help. So how'd they do that? It's a heart issue. It's like it's a worldview issue. It's work ethic, and you're not going to solve the lack of work ethic in any community by handing them more money and giving stuff away to them for free. Didn't solve the problem.
Well, especially, I mean, like you were talking about too, if the real issue is fatherlessness, there's a kind of work, like you require discipline and self-control to make money and not be starving. But the amount of work and discipline that it requires to be a father or a mother, even more so. And if you can't expect people to work hard daily in their vocation or for anything, then it's definitely not making it to parenting. And then, you just see swaths of unwise people that are just figuring things out for themselves. And then you introduce public education, which teaches you a bunch of knowledge claims and no actual system to organize them in. And it's like, man, we got to stop it. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Please stop.
It's in Berkeley, which it's Berkeley.
Berkeley.
But
Berkeley.
Yeah.
Margaret Sanger. Yeah. Anyway.